Well, hello everyone. I think we're going to come back to Blighty with a bump now. So today we're going to share with you our journey so far with the use of Samsung tablets at the University of East London, from the initial rollout to where we are now and what we have learnt in the process, with the hope that this will be of interest to you in terms of developing your ideas about mobile learning. We start our journey in 2014 when the University of East London was the first university in the UK to provide free Samsung Galaxy Note tablets to all our first-year undergraduate intake, a distribution to about 4,000 students and with an annual investment of more than £2 million. The genesis of this project, led by our Deputy Vice-Chancellor, was to provide better and more improved support for our students. At the same time, we were looking at developing one-stop shop centres, or hubs as they've become known, where students could go for all their support needs. And related to that, we wanted to be able to put support into the hands of our students when they weren't able to physically attend those support centres. And there were three main reasons for this project. The first one, to provide support for students in their hands. Secondly, we had been providing hard copy core text to our student intake, and there were many administrative issues with this, not least of which the fact that often the students wouldn't actually come and collect their hard copy texts. So we wanted to be able to provide text for them easily and online. And thirdly, we were very concerned about the developing digital skills divide amongst our student body. But there was one more challenge.
I do see, looking down the track in the next 1 to 2 years, that the Galaxy tab that we are providing will be at the heart of how we deliver learning and teaching in the classroom.
So with that challenge, which you may not have heard, saying that we wanted to put the Samsung tab at the heart of how we deliver learning and teaching in the classroom, we move on with our journey.
So our Yellow Brick Road really, as Mandy said, started in April of 2014. And the context for that was that the tablet was distributed to all first-year students and to the tutors that taught them. The first, I would say, real twist in the road came when, about January of that year, when we decided on learning and teaching objectives that needed to really lead the project. And those objectives were to develop employability skills in the students, to develop independent learning, to give tutors an insight into students' progress, and to let the students have a more active learning experience, as we've already heard about today. This allowed us to do a different kind of planning for the second year of the project, which is where we are now, and it increased the distribution to all of our academic staff and to more students. Now, along the way, though, there were many, many people involved in making this journey happen.
So, our students. Our students come from more than 120 countries. 70% of them are BAME, from Black, Asian or minority ethnic groups. More than 50% of them come from low-income households, and more than 50% of them are the first in their families to attend universities. Now, these factors are often spoken about in the sector in higher education in the UK as having some sort of negative connotation with them. However, we see our students as bringing their real-life experiences with them. They often have different starting points, but they are determined, they are resilient, and they are often inspiring. But what they often don't have when they come to us is a level playing field. So the ambition for providing tablets to our students was to level that playing field as championed from the top of the institution, which we've heard about earlier, by our Vice-Chancellor. Moving on with our journey, Another group which we clearly needed to take with us was our academic staff. So here you see a happy group of academic staff receiving their Samsung tablets, which we did also provide for them free. And you'll hear later in the presentation from Michelle a little bit about how we developed that training for them. And we'll also hear from some of our academic staff at the end of the presentation.
It was really important then on this journey to work with our partners, to provide a device that was appropriate for our students, to provide a platform for them to access their ebooks, and to work with our academic staff so that they could find the ebooks that they needed to deliver their modules. And our partners here, Cortext, we were very lucky, I would say, with all of our 3 partners, because they really embraced our vision, which was a unique proposition at UEL, in that we were going to give tablets to all of our students, as opposed to a bring-your-own-device model. And we needed to be able to support that vision. So Cortext worked with us in terms of how they developed their product over the 2 years. Samsung worked with us to really think about which device we needed and to help us to get that device. John Smith really helped, I would say, our academic community to think about the possibilities of e-book publishing and digital publishing more widely, and how that could enhance their own teaching practice. Now, we needed a real central base, though, to bring all of that together. I've just realized I've forgotten to show you the quotes as we went along here. We'll just catch up there. So we needed a base to bring all of that together. And the focal point of all of that activity was our IT department at UEL. They worked tirelessly in that short period of time to bring the partners together to make sure that we could deliver in that first year. And they were all also very important in choosing this first device. It was chosen because of its size. We went with Samsung because of the S Pen and the freedom that that would give our students in terms of developing how they use the tablet with their studies. And of course, we were also very concerned about battery. Our students commute a great distance, so we wanted them to be able to use their tablets on the train journey on the way into the university, use it for a full day of studies, and then continue to check on their notes on the way home. Now, both Mandy and I, though, have personal stories that impacted on how we saw the project developing.
So, a little bit about my personal story. I say in my conference profile that I first became interested in the possibilities of technology whilst working as a volunteer in Mali, West Africa. And I was interested in how technology would be transforming education practice and widening access. But that's not actually true. Not completely true, I should say. I did work as a volunteer in Mali. I did send my first email from Timbuktu, and Timbuktu does exist. But it was really a much less noble experience that really opened my eyes to how I, as a young academic, might be able to use technology in support of my teaching. After Mali, I returned to the UK, and I worked in London as a young academic. And at the end of my first term, I collected my exam scripts from the exam room, and I jumped on the train on my way home, and I nearly missed my stop, and I jumped off the train, and yes, then the train pulled away into the distance, and the exam scripts were left on the train. And if that wasn't bad enough, my evening was about to get much, much worse. Thank you. There was a knock on the door, and there was a policeman standing there, and he had in his hands my box of exam scripts. And it seems that this box had been reported suspicious, and I'd caused a major security alert across North London. And this was at the time of the terrorist campaign in London by the IRA. So, of course, I was mortified and embarrassed. And I thought there must be a better way of being able to communicate with my students, and there must be a better way of them being able to submit their work to me. And I became the first adopter of Blackboard's virtual learning environment in my teaching in my university, and have subsequently been interested in supporting how academics use technology ever since. Michelle, what's your story?
Well, my take is a little bit different because my ideas of what the tablets could really bring to our students were very much shaped by the time that I spent teaching in Asia. I taught in 3 countries, in Japan and in Korea and in China, in higher education. And for most of that time, my classrooms looked like this. There were large numbers of students. They were coming into the classroom mostly expecting to sit, to listen, to take notes, sometimes to sleep. They were sitting in rows like this of completely immovable desks and furniture. And my job there, because I was working to have a sense of parity in delivering UK awards and franchises there, was to really promote an interactive style of learning, which was very, very difficult in that physical space, but also in the educational context there. So I became very adept at getting colored pieces of paper, cutting them up, putting them in envelopes, collecting different kinds of buttons. I spent a lot of time in the convenience stores in Japan, which have wonderful color photocopiers, and collecting all these materials so that when I would walk into a classroom like this, I could instantly change the environment by having them, join on to the people with the same kind of button or whatever it was, and get them into groups that they wouldn't normally really feel comfortable getting into for the purpose of them having discussions so they could collaborate and communicate and change that whole environment. There must be a different way to do this with technology.
Thank you. But, coming back to our journey, have we simply moved from this to this? Are students simply more easily able to access their content and their reading lists online and more effectively manage their notes electronically with the introduction of the tablets? But we know that in schools, thank you. We know that in schools, students have been learning using their technology in many different ways and from an increasingly early age, working in groups, using social media to develop learning outside the classroom, and working much more collaboratively.
So what we really thought about, though, at UEL then, in moving now, thinking about where we're going in the 3rd year of this project, is that we needed to change the conversation in a more fundamental way. We needed to move from thinking about the tablets as an e-book delivery device to thinking about them as a learning tool and all the support that would be entailed in doing that. And hopefully that would bring us closer to what Dusty, our Deputy Vice Chancellor, spoke about as his aspiration for the tablet project in the first place. Our journey, in a sense, can really be divided into 3 parts then. Firstly, building e-book buzz in the 2nd year, the year we're currently in. How the work with the tablets and the data that we were able to collect fed into other work we were doing at the university with learner analytics and looking at student engagement. And finally, the big question about innovation and how do we really promote that. So if we look at the first year, really the most significant thing to remember about that year is the compressed timeline, because the decision was made at the beginning of the year and we were to implement this by September. So this impacted all of the processes that needed to happen in terms of supporting academics in choosing their e-books, in terms of ordering and delivering the devices, in terms of how we were actually going to distribute the devices to the students when they came to the university for enrollment. Now, our focus was squarely on delivery, and we were successful in that delivery. But what happened in that process is that the experience was not quite as it should be. And not surprisingly, reviews were a bit mixed in the first year. we actually had our Students' Union carry out a referendum in January of 2015. And some of the students actually said that they would really prefer to go back to having hardcover books. So we thought, well, that's very nice, and a lot of people were very drawn to that idea, but we wanted to really understand why this was coming out. Were we making assumptions about what students' expectations were for a higher education experience? Do they really feel that it needs to be about books and classroom? Was there an issue, perhaps, with their digital skills and capabilities? Were we also maybe making assumptions that because they all have their own devices, they would take to the tablets and use them as easily as they could in the classrooms and outside? So all of this fed into our planning for the second year, and things became more ordered along our yellow brick road. Our book selection process started much earlier. John Smith worked with the academics to be able to really help them find the right books, and if that wasn't available, to find alternatives so that they were more pleased with the choice of books that they had, which was obviously very important. Cortex shared their roadmap with us, and there were some really significant improvements from the first year that the platform was implemented to the second year. It was more stable, it had more gesture support, you didn't have to sign in twice for the students to access their ebooks, and all of this provided a much enhanced user experience for the students. We decided to go with a larger tablet, so the 10.1-inch tablet, because we thought, again, this would help them in terms of accessing their ebooks. We increased the eligibility scheme, so some of our postgraduate students also received the tablets, but of course in the second year now, you have your incoming first-year students receiving it, and the second-year students already have it, so you're starting to get a little bit of momentum in that way. Really importantly, to bring our academic colleagues along with us on this journey, all academic staff across the university received the Samsung tablet. But to do that, they had to come to one of our pedagogically oriented training sessions, and that was a picture you saw of them after that session. So in that, they went through a number of activities. They first looked at using Office 365 and getting familiar with that on their tablet, but then they looked at research activities that they could do both in class and out of the class. They looked at polling activities, collaborative activities, and also managing multimedia files. Of course, one training session isn't going to be enough, and people are coming at it from a variety of different disciplines, so we developed a learning and teaching app catalog that was categorized in different areas, for example, test quizzes, note-taking, field work, to allow them to have those resources and develop their own ways of working with the tablets in their particular classes. Start of the year became an experience. So rather than just having their tablet given to them in a box and taking it home on the train in a box and perhaps putting it on a shelf for a few days before they open that box, what happened was, as part of the enrollment process, they received their tablets. IT was there helping them to get started with it right away. So as soon as they received the tablet, they were learning how to log on to the Wi-Fi on campus, they were learning how to access their emails, and they were really importantly having a play with the device so they could start to feel comfortable with it. And this was really important in getting the students engaged with the possibilities with the device. And finally, where we're at right now is the evaluation of the project. In its first year, it was very much about customer satisfaction, but we're a university and we need to look at it in terms of research design. So this year we're really triangulating data from staff feedback, student feedback, and usage data to help us understand not only what the difference is in terms of how students are working with their ebooks, but importantly, how they're using the tablets. So far, what we've seen has been very promising, because if we compare the first-year students from year one of the tablet projects to this year, year two, we see an increase in all areas, in book downloads, in the notes that they've taken, and in page reads.
Thank you. So at this stage of the journey, we were able to link up the work that we had been doing with the tablets with the ongoing work that the university was doing in relation to the use of learner analytics to support student progression, retention, and indeed success. So a student engagement dashboard had been developed for our personal tutors to use, and we'd identified a number of variables that we thought contributed to student success, such as attendance, Moodle use, and coursework grades. And very importantly, we thought that the access to the core text was a clear indication of student engagement when we talked with our academic staff. So this engagement index was used by our academic staff, by our personal tutors, to evaluate the status of students on their journey in the first year. And in January of this year, we carried out a mid-year review of all our first-year students to rag rate where they were in terms of their progression using the variables in the dashboard. What's interesting and exciting for me as somebody who used to be a personal tutor is that schools were able to interrogate the data of the dashboard, and personal tutors were able to provide a modification for the RAG rating. So, for example, here we have the RAG rating of a particular school in the university, and the student engagement dashboard had assigned students to the different ratings, but then the school itself, the personal tutors, had gone onto the system and modified those ratings slightly depending on what they knew about the students' personal circumstances, their individual journeys, what issues that they had been trying to cope with in the last few weeks, etc., etc. And this avoided a situation where we would often be sending out letters to students, particularly those who were red rated, saying, you know, you are in danger of failing, you are in danger of this, you are in danger of that. And we were able to modify our approach to our students based on that technology, and the use of the tablets clearly contributed to that.
Our last step, our last stage, is where we are now, really. And it's, again, thinking about how we change that conversation, how we really start to now, moving forward, because next year, all of the students will have tablets, all the way through the undergraduate. So how do we really develop the tablet as a learning tool? How do we move from it as something that is really focused around content to something that is focused around how it's being used? One of the things that we started this year that's proved to be very popular with the staff is our tablet user group. We have one on each campus, and they meet monthly. And it's that communities of practice, bringing academics together to share their ideas, to talk about the things that they're doing with it, and really to talk about the issues that they have and how they're solving those issues that have been important in developing this culture at the university. We're also really looking forward to next year implementing the Cortex Analytic Dashboard for staff to allow them to understand how the students in their classes are really working with the e-books, and also the other collaborative functions that Cortex has on its roadmaps in terms of the note-taking and the ability to collaborate in a module. We're also very much looking forward to Samsung e-boards, which are coming to our campus, and which you can see, as mentioned, set up for demonstration out near the stairs, and how having those with the tablets will really allow us to sort of fulfill some of the potential in this journey that we haven't been able to. But importantly, too, we're thinking about how do we find ways to promote the staff. How do we give staff space and time and support to be able to think within their particular disciplinary context what a different way of delivering that would be? So these are our questions as we move along.
Thank you. So finally, have we delivered on our Deputy Vice-Chancellor's vision that by using the tablets we will transform how we teach in the classroom? Well, let's hear from some of our academic staff.
Really requires students to get engaged, and using both Padlet and other similar programs, students could share their ideas. They would write full sentences and share those, and then we could discuss them because they would come up on the screen. And we also tried a bit of mind mapping, and so it's all these kind of activities that allow students to really to participate, share ideas that wouldn't be possible without the tablet that they all have.
So the students like it, they're using their tablet very successfully, very easy to use, and they can see how other students answer the question. I can see that actually a learning process is actually taking place, and the students have actually learned something in a very quick and very easy to manage way.
I'm Kirsten. I'm the English for Academic Purposes tutor at the School of Business and Law. I do embedded sessions in modules at business school, and I tend to use tablets, or encourage students to use their tablets, to access materials that we've uploaded to the module Moodle pages, and for interactive discussion topics like Padlet, which I find is really useful for sharing ideas in the group and generally having brainstorms and starting discussions. So they've really enhanced the interactivity, I think, of the classroom and helped us to take the communication skills off the page.
So interesting in relation to the question earlier about whether this sort of meant the end of the classroom, you'll see that these videos were all taken in an empty computing lab, and when we did these last week, that was the only space that we could find available, the empty computing lab. So these are just a few examples of how our academic staff have started to rethink how they're delivering teaching in the classroom and indeed beyond. And the next stage of our journey is that we are looking to engage our academic staff in new ways of using the Samsung so that we can really deliver on our learning by doing aspect of our learning and teaching strategy. Thank you.
Thank you.